With the arrival of Avengers Endgame, fan excitement reached a whole new peak. But that excitement was mingled with a decent level of worry, too. After all, this was the purported big finale of the Marvel Cinematic Universe up to this point. There were bound to be some casualties.
Is it so? It is.
But we all know the way comic books work. Characters that die never really stay dead. With that in mind, let's take a look at some of the Avengers who could venture back from the grave to grace the silver screen once more. We all knew there was going to be some tough goodbyes, but who knew just how tough they would be? So here we are, Marvel fans, trying to pick up the pieces in a world without Tony Stark. It's not easy, and it's even more difficult when you begin to realize that it's not just Mr. Stark we've had to say farewell to. There's Gamora, Vision, Black Widow, and even though he's not technically dead, Steve Rogers as well. How do we even cope with all these losses? I'll tell you how. Lots and lots of ice cream. I'm talking tubs of the stuff. You'd be amazed by the restorative healing powers of ice cream. But once all the ice cream's gone, what next? What are we supposed to do? Just eat more ice cream? I mean, well, maybe. But while the idea of endlessly consuming ice cream is appealing, the repercussions are not. We have to find other healthier ways to address our feelings.
Not a great plan.
Well, here's the thing. There may be hope after all. Disney and Marvel Studios have announced a number of projects and solo outings for certain characters we know to be dead. Call it a way to help fans deal with the loss of such beloved characters. We'll go ahead and call it as we see it. Disney looking for any possible way they can get more money into those pockets. Still, we can't complain. After all, you don't really want those characters to be gone forever, do ya? Do ya? If you do, you can just let yourself out right now. But here's the thing. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has always relied on some semblance of logic. Sure, it's all gods and magic and superpowers and aliens and mystical stones and gauntlets that can help snap people out of existence, but still, you know what we mean. There's a believability to the whole thing. Bringing people back from the dead willy-nilly might not make sense, but trust in the people at Marvel Studios to give it some semblance of reason. Or you can just trust us here at ScreenRant to come up with some crazy ideas for how these dead Avengers could make their way back into the realm of the living. These ideas might be kooky, sure, but we promise they might make a little bit of sense too. Might is the key word here.
Were you talking to the right guy?
So where do we start? Well, why not start with Iron Man himself, Mr. Tony Stark? Stark was the character that kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe back in 2008. He's been the poster boy for the entire MCU ever since. While Iron Man only had 3 solo entries, his presence and personality have always guided this franchise. We've seen his character develop in Avengers Age of Ultron, Captain America Civil War, and even as a mentor figure to Peter Parker in Spider-Man Homecoming. Over the course of these films, we've watched Tony shift from selfish and self-absorbed to a genuinely selfless hero. While it was painful to see him go in Endgame, his sacrifice felt like the right choice for his character. In fact, we'd argue that Tony Stark is one of the characters that should stay dead in the MCU's foreseeable future. But if he were to come back, here's how we think it should go down. In the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, we see a Peter Parker coping with the death of yet another father figure in his life after Uncle Ben. It was, after all, Tony Stark who ushered Spidey into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Tony gave him his suit and helped set him on the path of the hero. There's even a little teaser in Iron Man 2 that sets up the father-son relationship here. That little boy in the Iron Man mask? Yeah, that's apparently Peter Parker. Is that kind of a forced retcon to provide some superfluous fan service? Absolutely, but hey, it's still kinda cool. So stop complaining. In the wake of Tony's death, Peter is trying to determine how he can live up to Stark's legacy. He wants to become the hero the world desperately needs in Iron Man's absence. It's clear from the trailer that Peter is adopting many of Stark's technologies, from fancy new suits to the awesome sunglasses Tony used. Actually, does anybody know where we can grab a pair of those? We typed Tony Stark awesome sunglasses into the Amazon search bar, but nothing showed up. Maybe they're not available to the mass market yet. Still, if you know, just hit us up. So, what does this have to do with Tony Stark's return? We're getting to that. We've already seen the character return in hologram form during Endgame's final scenes. Who's to say we don't see something similar in Far From Home? And what if these sunglasses are the key to making it happen? What if Tony decides to make a brief return in hologram form to usher Peter on? If he recorded a message for his own daughter, it's likely he recorded one for his surrogate son too, right? This would be a great way to get a Tony Stark cameo in the MCU without retconning the importance of his sacrifice in Endgame.
I'm not obsessed with him, just very observant.
And while Peter's already got his own version of Tony's AI in Karen, what if Tony becomes Peter's new Jarvis? Not gonna lie, that would be pretty fantastic. Plus, it's a great excuse to get more Robert Downey Jr. in our lives. This is totally in line with the comics too. Following the events of the Civil War II storyline, Tony Stark went into a coma. Riri Williams ended up taking up the mantle as Ironheart, and Tony sent her an AI version of his consciousness to guide her. If Riri is introduced to Marvel's cinematic universe, this could be another great way to get Tony Stark back into the mix. Maybe there's a way to utilize the barf technology introduced in Captain America Civil War as well. Yeah, you heard that right, baby. Barf.
Binarily augmented retroframing, or BARF. God, I gotta work on that acronym.
Let's move on to our next Avenger, shall we? Let's see, who have we got here? How about Vision? Oh yeah, Vision is one of those unfortunate souls that 100% bit the dust during the events of Infinity War. Maybe we shouldn't use the term bit the dust. That's a little confusing, seeing as how the infamous Thanos snap turned so many heroes into dust. Not in Vision's case, though. He met his demise prior to that, so we know he's toast. It was a really sad demise, too. Vision was created in Age of Ultron. He was equal parts Jarvis, Ultron, and Mind Stone. Over the course of the MCU, Vision attempted to become more human. Perhaps his boldest attempt was this miraculous sweater vest in Captain America Civil War. Because nothing says human like looking like somebody's dad.
I'm saying there may be a causality.
By the time Infinity War rolled around, Vision and Scarlet Witch were finally starting to be all romantic and whatnot. They seemed to have a genuinely happy life together. That life was cut short when Thanos violently rips the Mind Stone from Vision's head during Infinity War's climactic showdown. But even though Vision is definitely dead, Disney Plus has announced a Vision and Scarlet Witch series for their streaming service. And you're not going to believe this, people, but the show is actually titled WandaVision.
Okay, what?
No, we're not kidding. Seriously, look it up. We'll wait. Maybe this is a temporary title, or maybe it's just something we're going to all have to learn to live with. What do we know about WandaVision other than its bonkers title? Not much. Marvel Studios has kept the details of all its future films and streaming series under wraps. What we do know, however, is that it'll be roughly 6 hours long. That's about 8 45-minute episodes total. There's also a strong chance this series will pull from Tom King's superb Vision miniseries. Seriously, if you haven't read that, you might need to check it out immediately. It's amazing, and it's won like a lot of awards. Its story follows Vision, his wife, and their 2 kids, all built by Vision, as they attempt to live a normal life in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. Naturally, their lives end up being anything but normal. But Tom King's Vision takes place in a world where the character Vision is very much alive. So how will WandaVision, which by the way we will never get tired of saying, work if Vision is dead? Here's where our theory comes into play.
What have you brought today? Tell me.
So Infinity War took great lengths to suggest Vision might be able to live on without the need for the Mind Stone. What if Wakandan technology allowed for Vision's consciousness to be somehow stored in their system? This would have happened during Shuri's attempt to extract the stone from Vision's head. Seeing as how Wakandan technology is all super advanced and stuff, we wouldn't doubt Shuri's abilities to rebuild Vision. Marvel Studios could also go the route of the comics, should they feel so inclined. They probably would be so inclined, seeing as how, all these movies are based on comics in the first place.
Yeah.
In John Byrne's Avengers West Coast run, Vision was destroyed only to be rebuilt by none other than the OG Ant-Man himself, Hank Pym. The only problem was that Vision ended up being almost completely different. He was more robot than human. Bummer. But if the WandaVision series will focus as much on Scarlet Witch as it does on Vision, we're willing to bet Wanda will play a big role in Vision's return. We've only just started to see what Wanda's capable of. Perhaps WandaVision will explore her attempts to use her powers to bring him back. Additionally, it could showcase the repercussions of her decision to do so. Now, how about Black Widow? What's the best way to bring her back into the land of the living? Natasha Romanoff met her demise at Vormir, the realm of the Soul Stone. She sacrificed herself so Clint Barton, aka Hawkeye, could live. But with a Black Widow solo movie starring Scarlett Johansson on the way, we've gotta ask, how's that gonna work? Believe it or not, there's an easy explanation for this. At the end of Endgame, Steve Rogers traveled back through time, returning all the Infinity Stones to their proper places in the timeline. So what happens when you trade back a Soul Stone? Wouldn't that then bring back the soul sacrifice to obtain said stone in the first place? Maybe it's a cheap way to bring Natasha back, but it makes sense, right? If they do want to commit to the character's death though, Marvel Studios can take the route of a prequel of sorts. Maybe the Black Widow solo film will take place in the time period between S.H.I.E.L.D.'s dismantling in Winter Soldier and the events depicted in Age of Ultron. You could pull a Batman Begins and cut back and forth between a modern-day tale and Black Widow's upbringing and origins.
I'd sit this one out, Cap.
I don't see how I can.
And finally, let's get to Captain America himself, Steve Rogers. Some good old Cap didn't actually die, but But Endgame made it clear that his story had come to a close. Or did it? Look, if Steve is still alive and well somewhere in the timeline, you know there's a chance Marvel will bring him back. Steve might have traveled back in time to be with Peggy Carter, the love of his life, but can you imagine a world in which he just sits back while terrible things are happening? No, we can't either. Maybe he'd step out of retirement in one of these alternate timelines to set things right, should his help be needed. This is all to say the door is just a teensy-weensy bit cracked for Captain America's return, should Chris Evans be interested. He's made it clear he's done with the character in a number of interviews, but never say never where a multi-million-dollar paycheck is involved. And who knows, maybe old man Steve could serve as a mentor to the new Captain America Sam Wilson. There could be an interesting dynamic there, and it would be a great excuse to have a Chris Evans cameo in the upcoming Falcon and Winter Soldier series on Disney+.
It's a nice way of putting it.
So, how do you feel, true believers? Should Marvel bring these heroes back from the dead, or are they better left to the great beyond? Are there any other ways you think they might return? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to ScreenRant. You don't want to miss all the great content we're churning out daily. So, see you next time.